Good evening, and if you're just tuning in, you are listening live to the Angel Rock. I am your host, Lorilei Potvin. You are listening on. Sorry, my brain's getting ahead of me here. You are listening live on United Public Radio Network, also known as UFO Paranormal Radio Network, brought to you outside of New Orleans, Louisiana. Give a huge shout out to Joe Montaldo, who started the network and also still owns it. He has some great content of his own. It was just my 3rd year anniversary here in my home here with the Angel Rock. I was just saying to our wonderful guest, you're going to love him, that I did a show Monday through Friday in a previous network, but it never felt like home, and it sure feels like home here. So I want to remind people, if you are listening live and you want to watch the show, please come over to the UFO Paranormal Radio Facebook page, as well as the YouTube channel. A lot of people watch on my Facebook profile. I can't see the comments here. I have no idea why on my phone, and I always go back afterwards. But if you want to participate in the discussion, I always try and involve the audience. So, because without you guys, we wouldn't have a show. So a little bit about myself. I'm a Canadian clairvoyant medium. I'm a crystal Reiki energy healer, an Akashic Records practitioner, a spiritual teacher and mentor, and I'm also a registered nurse. Now, my show, I cover all aspects of the esoteric and the supernatural, with a sprinkling of truth-seeking thrown in there, always with a positive spin by the end. And the guests that I have on my show are people from all walks of life. So what they are doing, or they've produced either professionally or extracurricularly, they are making a positive change for humanity. And tonight's guest is no different. He has been on my fellow partner in crime, who may jump in here when he gets home from work. We'll see. He's not home yet. He's been on the Dell Show on the Delicious Recipe here on UPRN on Thursday nights. So I wanted to have him first, but the Dell has an hour show, so he's already had him on twice. So I've reminded the Dell, if he comes on here, as he likes to be known on here, that it's my show, so don't take over. So the guest that we have tonight, he's a historian. He's from Ireland. His name is Tom Reilly, and I'm going to read a little bit about what I was shared from the PR agent that he has, that we absolutely love. He sends us the most wonderful guests, so a huge shout out to Gavin Lee Davies. It says, historian Tom Reilly has single-handedly taken on the might of academia with regard to Cromwell and allegations of his complicity in civilian atrocity stories in Ireland. Change that, and you change so much about the understanding of Oliver Cromwell. Tom has appeared on national TV and radio, both in the UK and Ireland, and most recently with George Norrie on Coast to Coast AM. Where am I here? Oh, and chat shows. His books on Cromwell have been reviewed by all of the national newspapers in Ireland and many in the UK, including one on the front cover of the book supplement of the Sunday Times. The book we're going to be talking about, his newest book, The Protector, The Fall and Rise of Oliver Cromwell, is his first book of fiction. And in brackets here, it says, even if it is mostly nonfiction. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Tom Reilly's trenchant defense of Oliver Cromwell is the fact that he is a native of and has lived in the town of, I'm probably going to get this wrong, Drogheda? Drogheda? Did I say that right?
Not bad.
Okay, Ireland, all of his life. Drogheda is one place where Cromwell is alleged to have committed civilian atrocities, easily the biggest blot on his career. Welcome, Tom. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you very much, Lorilei. That was a very good attempt at the pronunciation. The G is silent, believe it or not. So it's like a H. It's Drogheda.
Drogheda. Okay, well then I was way off. I'm usually pretty good with names. I speak 3 languages, but Ireland, I have never been there. I would love to come one day, but I know that, like the name Siobhan, for example, most people cannot pronounce that name when you see it written. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. There's a few more, like Niamh. That's spelled Nimh.
And it's Niamh?
Niamh, yeah. There's also Caoimhe. Caoimhe is Caoimh. It's just the Irish language, so it's a bit messed up. But no, you did very well. Congratulations. You're halfway there.
I'm halfway there. Okay, so for our listeners, so 'cause we have people listening from all over the world, every country, tons of people listening live. So welcome if you're just tuning in. We are happy to have you here. We are live with Tom Reilly here from Ireland. Who is Oliver Cromwell, and
So
why are you writing books about him for people that haven't heard of him?
absolutely. Well, you said a very eloquent thing there about 2 minutes ago. You said something like that your guests come on the show and they've usually done something either professionally or extracurricularly
Hmm.
that's positive and
Right?
contributes. I can't remember exact paraphrasing now. Whatever you said,
Yeah.
humane, and something positive for the world. And to be honest, that's what this is for me. Oliver Cromwell, if you inhabit or have ever inhabited um, Western Europe, more than likely you'd have heard of this guy. He is a household name in the islands that surround me.
I've heard his
Um,
name. I just didn't know a lot about him, but I've heard of him.
well,
Hmm.
that's good that even that's interesting to me. So what he was he was a very divisive figure insofar as you either like him or you loathe him. He essentially caused an uprising, or at least was involved in an uprising in the UK, where he usurped the throne, and they chopped the head off the king, and he eventually took over as head of state. He's the only commoner ever to have ruled Ireland, England, and Scotland. But yet,
Wow.
his legacy in this country, in Ireland, is particularly bad because at one stage he came over here to subjugate the Irish, and that's exactly what he did. So if you're Irish, you will have a very preconceived idea because you will no doubt have experienced the Irish educational system, where you will have heard horror stories of things that Cromwell is supposed to have done. It's like mentioning the word Hitler or Osama bin Laden or Saddam
Hmm.
Hussein. It's got the same connotation. You think to yourself,
Wow.
this guy was an animal, but he wasn't, and that's what I am setting out to do. As you said there, I'm trying to correct a historical miscarriage of justice.
Well, I think that's so important, Tom, because I think we talked after when you were on Dell's show one time,
Mm,
or it might even have been, no, I think it was after. But it's almost like history keeps repeating itself, doesn't it? Because regardless of what or who the topic is, regardless, it seems, of where you live in so-called modern times, modern education system, history has been completely erased. It has been changed to a narrative that
mm.
doesn't support the facts. And that's what it sounds like with Oliver Cromwell. Like, why did they decide to, I can't even say discredit, because I know a bit of this story. I'm trying not to give it away with what they did with his
Yeah.
head, and but
Yes, yes,
but
I know.
why?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, again, like as you say, I think you're alluding to the fact that the victors always write history.
I
So
love
he
that.
ended
Yeah.
up, yeah, he ended up being a loser, and that has a different kind of a meaning these days. But he lost in the end. Now he after his death, certain things happened, and the king was returned, and the royalists came back to the UK. So they basically steamrolled completely over the regime that had gone previously, and they wanted to erase all trace of it in history, and that's essentially how it all started, and how he became a monster in this particular country. And I'm talking to you from Drogheda. I've never, as we say, left the parish. I've been here all my life, and I've
Okay.
never. Yeah, it's just one of those things. I'm a home bird, so
Well,
you
I've
know.
never left Thunder Bay. Like, I've traveled. I live in northwestern Ontario. Now, Dell was born in Toronto. I think, no, he was born here. He lived in Toronto many times. He's been all around the world, but he's moved. But no, I've lived here my whole life. So I hear you. Hmm.
Okay, I was just interested in your hesitation there because you weren't sure where Adele was actually born, but that's interesting.
Well, the reason, no, I was trying to remember, because there's quite a story about, because I'm a nurse as well, and
Yeah.
hurt my back, so I can't go back to work. But
Okay.
The story of Dell's birth, I'm surprised he hasn't told it on a show, maybe he has, is
Hmm.
his mother was in nursing school at the time, and his father was in Toronto working as an electrician. When she went into labor, she was at school. So there were 25 nurses at the birth of Dell. And I was trying to think, where did this happen? Oh, that's right. It was here in Thunder
Oh
Bay.
my
And
God.
yes. So I said, you're quite famous being all newborn and welcome to the world with all these nurses.
That's got to be a record. So surely that should be in the Guinness Book of Records.
I don't know, but it's quite the story. Well,
It
we have
so
quite
is.
the history, Dell and I. Some of his relatives were at my first marriage, actually. We had the same aunt and uncle through marriage. So it's like we're the
Okay.
second generation of the mingling of families, if you will.
Oh, excellent. So
Anyways, back to, oh, go ahead.
you've been haunting each other for some years then.
Yes, we have. Yes, definitely. I was going to say, we got to get back to your story. I could go on and on and
No,
on.
you're
So,
fine.
yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, when the question was sort of why is he such a difficult individual to interpret, and there were just several layers to the story really. The layers that you get when you're living in this country are very specific, and the conditioning that you talked about is also very specific. I don't know that it's necessarily because it happens over centuries. But I don't know, to me, the government, let's say in the 1890s, which was when Ireland, there's a very famous song that we're going to be a nation once again,
Mm-hmm.
that because we were suppressed by the English yoke for all those years, 800 years of oppression we talk about here. So
Right.
during that time, they decided that they would, lots of Irish things started around then, like very specific organizations that would be very Irish to counter or even to contra the English, uh, uh, you know,
Yeah.
everything that had happened through English oppression. So at that stage, then they decided to go looking for a scapegoat, and they just delved deep into the 17th century, and they found this guy called Oliver Cromwell who came over, and it was the first time Ireland had ever been completely taken over by England. They had made attempts previous to that, but it was the first time anyway when he left that Ireland was totally submissive to England, and that's why he's a perfect monster. And then, of course, they threw in the very convenient stories that he killed everybody that had lived in my town, and that's beyond the military. In other words, that he killed babies and toddlers and
Oh my
teenagers and
goodness.
granddads and grandmas and all that kind of stuff. But this is nonsense, because he didn't, and I've proved it through other books that I've written.
I was writing because lots of times when something comes up, I make notes. But you know what I
Mm.
was wondering, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think that they villainized him to this day, sort of to keep the people thinking what a monster he was versus getting any ideas of him being the first commoner to lead the people and defeat the king, right? We don't want, because when you were talking about that, I was thinking
Mm.
maybe Oliver Cromwell's ghost could come back here and give a few people in charge over in Canada a kick in the butt. But you think about it, right? Because
Yeah.
if you villainize them, people aren't going to get any ideas about doing what he did back in his time because it was monumental. Would that be also a reason, do you think?
Well, I have to say, I think it would even be, yes, I think that's very insightful. And I think that maybe a lot of that has its source in the 17th century, because I think that was the exact, the raison d'etre. That's what they actually did at that time. They decided to blacken his name, not just to, kind of dispose of the republic that they had generated, but also to make sure that nobody would do the same thing again, because this is
Exactly.
what's going to happen, and even the regicides themselves. So a regicide is somebody who kills a king, and
Oh,
there
I've never
were,
heard that before. Okay. I'm gonna
it's
write
an
that down.
interesting, yeah, it's a good name. But there were several of them who signed his death warrant. So they were all hunted down, again, when they lost, let's say, the game of politics, and they were all either hung, drawn, and quartered, or imprisoned, or some of them committed suicide. In fact, there's a very interesting story of two or three guys who made it to the New World, which is across the Atlantic to America. I can't remember, was it North America, Canada? I can't remember, but I think they're running around from the king's men in the 17th century, trying to on the run, trying to get away from them, and they're eventually found. So it's a big deal, and yes, this would have been to dissuade others from any sort of notions that they might have. But there are different levels here, Lorilei, because when you consider the country that I live in and the country that's beside us, it's very convenient for us to be the victim of all these 100 years of oppression, and these days we're trying to not so much ignore history, but put history in its place and understand that the economic, religious, military, social situation back then was completely different to anything that's current. So mindsets were so different. It's like another planet.
Right.
But the tradition does die very hard, and Irish people don't have to dig very deep for animosity when it comes to our UK neighbours, unfortunately. And that's the kind of thing that I don't really like, and I think that we should be all embracing and forgive the past and move on to a positive future. That kind of stuff,
Well, yes, I hear you, but the only thing growing up that I really heard about as a child over in Ireland is it the PLO? The
No, the IRA, I think you mean.
Thank you. My history. The IRA.
Okay.
Sorry, no, you are right. The IRA, and the things that were going on with that. For people that haven't heard of it, you could probably share it much more succinctly than I can. Obviously, I don't know why I was saying PLO. I know what the PLO belongs to. Couldn't think of the letters there. But
that's okay.
What was going on with that, Tom? Because there seems to be like these periods throughout history in Ireland where you've got a lot of discourse, if you will, and fighting and.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the backdrop was to this English oppression. I say it in a very glib way, but so many people have lost their lives over the years, over the hundreds of years, and on several occasions, Ireland made attempts, mostly doomed attempts, to deliver Ireland for the Irish, and Ireland should be just Irish, and England should be gone. There's a very interesting figure, so England has something like 192 countries in the United Nations, and yes. England has invaded 170 of them. so that's quite a figure to note, and because we're just next door, and literally, we're very much in the firing line. So the kind of things that they did, they say the sun never sets on the British Empire, because they have, locations all over the world where time of the day, Canada being, one of them, they're in the Commonwealth.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, I find it very interesting. You talk about, and I know you mentioned the IRA, but I remember when I went, as an Irishman, I went to Victoria in British Columbia, Vancouver Island, excuse me, and we couldn't understand what we were seeing. We were seeing, because it's Victoria, we were seeing Union Jacks, which is the British flag, all over the place, and that we found that offensive, because we kind of do, because it represents so many different aspects of Irish history here that are negative for us. We have our flag, which is green, white, and orange. And interestingly, the green represents Ireland, the white represents peace, and the orange represents the Orange movement in the north of Ireland. So I suppose symbolically, that flag is seen to kind of link all factions over here.
When you say the Orange movement, Tom, I don't think I've heard of that before. What is that?
So that's basically William of Orange, who was...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I'm laughing. After you finish sharing this, I'll tell you why. Okay. It's not about your William of Orange.
Okay, that's interesting. So he was a king, at least he became king after a battle which actually took place very close to Drogheda. as well. And so it's William of Orange, which is in France, but he was a Dutchman, so it's all very complicated. But the Orange movement would represent Protestantism in the north of Ireland.
Isn't
which
that
would represent,
interesting?
Yeah, absolutely. And this came actually not long after Cromwell. That happened in 1690, which is about, so that's 40 years after Cromwell was here. And, you know, that was when Ireland eventually did become a republic, or at least make an agreement with England. There was a treaty that was signed in 1922. The 6 counties that were exempted from that treaty where, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people saw that as a stepping stone, but it became a very divisive area. So Protestants and Catholics.
Because that's what I always hear about from but again, I'm across the pond, but we've always heard about Catholicism and, you know, this large Catholic, like the areas of Ireland with Catholicism versus Protestant. Can't talk tonight.
Protestantism, yeah. It's okay. That'll be the drink.
I haven't. I'm drinking Kool-Aid. I swear. Well, it's not Kool-Aid, but it's no alcohol.
So again, it's quite complicated, but the whole you know, notion was that, you know, when I was growing up, the Catholics equals good, Protestants equals bad, and I'm sure if you were brought up because I was brought up Catholic,
I was. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. If you're brought up a Protestant, and the whole thing, you know, is crazy because both sects are Christian. So, you know, that's like, I really just find that very difficult to deal with. But however, it did, and it wasn't always the case that, you know, religion was the divide, because Orangism in the north. It still is, but more so, one of the things that bothers me, sorry, I know we're going down this road, but I find it very interesting.
Let's go there. Let's go wherever we need to go, because I got lots to add to that conversation.
Okay. I'm still interested why you laughed when I said William of Orange.
Okay, before you start, Dell's home now. Okay, the reason why I was laughing, because I knew Dell's grandparents, like before we were together. And his grandfather was quite the character, and he was a boxer. He was all kinds of things, but he had black hair, and as he got older, it would get silver and white, and he would dye it. And I guess he had a dyeing accident, and it was bright orange. So everybody in the family was calling him William of Orange. That's why I was laughing. It wasn't a big story, but it was funny.
But there's a history lesson in there, because there was a William of Orange.
Yes, that's why I laughed when you said it. I thought they had made the name up. I'd never heard of. And then it seemed familiar, so I probably have heard it. You know, it just seemed, it didn't sound odd, is what I'm saying, but I didn't know what was behind it. So I'm glad.
Can I tell you, I am just so proud that I have actually introduced you to the real William of Orange, and not the guy who dyed his hair in an accident.
Well, accidental dyeing. I think it was supposed to be black, and it turned out orange.
He just misread the bottle. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what he did, but oh my goodness. Yes, that's another one of Dell's stories from his childhood with William of Orange. Yes.
But just to get back to the you know, the situation. So when you mentioned the IRA. And so the IRA so that's an acronym for the Irish Republican Army, which kind of, you know, is what it says on the tin. That's an army that would be fighting for Ireland's freedom. And the problem is that there was an old IRA, which had a very noble cause, and that fought in wars about 100 years ago now, and they're all being sort of the centenaries of a lot of activity that happened about 100 years ago coming up now. So in 1922, the treaty was signed, and this is 2022. But there was a new breed of IRA that came out of the 1970s, and that was a very different animal. That was an organization who committed atrocities.
Yes, that's what I was familiar with. Yes.
Yeah, and you know, but equally on the loyalist side, there would have been other terrorist organizations who would have committed atrocities too. So it was a kind of a tit for tat thing going on for most of the time that I was growing up. But thankfully, that's gone. The Good Friday Agreement was signed by all stakeholders in 1999, I think. So it's about 30 years old now, and that's effectively, like the armed terrorists lay down their arms, and there is no
Okay.
acrimony to that level. But having said that, there are still, which just it amuses. I don't know if the word is even amuses, but they hold on to traditions in the north of Ireland that to me is extremely overzealous, and traditions should be held on to. I completely get that, but they're kind of fanatical about them up there.
Mm-hmm.
And my opinion, and however controversial it is that they really need to get with the contemporary world, because they'll be left behind in some sort of bitter, divisive state, because the two sides are still very separate and it's still determined by religion. And I have some, by the way, Lorilei, I have some boxes we need to tick tonight. I think religion is one of them.
Good. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. We probably won't talk about the book at all, or Cromwell, because in 2 hours' time we'd be just going, what the heck happened there?
You know what, though? But people know that about my show. I'm seeing it says some destinations won't get comments. I hope everybody's hearing this. I'm going to remind everybody, if you're watching or listening, you're listening to the Angel Rock Live with my fantastic guest, Tom Reilly. If you want to watch the show, come on over to UFO Paranormal Radio, the YouTube channel. It's also, I think it's streaming to my YouTube channel. It's also on the UFO Paranormal Radio Facebook page. If you are on my Facebook page or profile, I don't get to see the comments till after. So, because we'd love to hear if you've got some questions, some comments. I like to involve the audience, make you part of the discussion. Sorry about that little sidestep there, but I want to remind people to come on over.
I love it. Nothing wrong with that.
About religion, though, and I was raised Roman Catholic. I was forced to go to Catholic school. I was.
Did you say you were forced to go?
Yes.
Okay, that's in retrospect, I presume, is it?
No. While I was going,
back,
I had no use for it. I did not want to go to it. I was forced to go to church every Sunday, every Catholic holiday, and I don't say that with remorse or anger or anything like that. To me, it was a waste of time for me, because I felt I really didn't get anything out of it. And do I believe in God? Yes. And I respect other people's beliefs. But even with the paranormal situation we were through in the last 11 years, I've seen some comments below our TV episode like, well, the problem is you people don't get right with Jesus. You're living together and you're not married, or these southern accents. You can hear them when they're saying this. I'm not saying people from the South say that. It's just there was one comment in particular that I knew where it came from, and it was like, seriously. So to me, we had a lot of people stating, well, your problem is you don't have a belief in God. Okay. And to me, with religion, and I have said this for years, and if some people need it, it's not my job to judge, but religion is a man-made created entity. I really believe that. Love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, my head is currently bursting. Oh, wow. Yeah. So many things. Almost every second word there, I was thinking of say this, but I just, didn't want to interrupt.
You can interrupt it. Go ahead.
Well, just I've been so just the whole Catholic thing. You see, again, it's interesting to hear you say that about your upbringing, because I suspect that it wasn't, pervasive in your society like it is in mine. In other words, every household, with some exceptions, obviously, but. Generally, I think it was something in the 60s when I was growing up, and I know I don't look that old. You're supposed to say that.
I was born in 65. I'm going to be 57 August 15th. I never hide it. So
now we know that's not true. So, but thank you for.
and you don't look like you were growing up in the 60s either. So
yeah, no, I'm 62 this year, so it's a thing. But
I would not have thought that.
Well, thank you. We're very privileged to get to this age. That's the way I look at it. Because lots of people didn't make it.
You're right.
So it was completely pervasive in my youth, and our lives were punctuated by the Catholic faith and all of the holidays or the holy days, and the first communion and the confirmation. All of that stuff was, and you went to mass religiously.
Yep.
You know, and not only did we have God in the church, but we had him at home, we had him at school, you know, the Catholic God. So we, you know, so it's very much ingrained in your psyche here.
Yes.
And it's, if you try to get out, which I have done, out of the it's not even an organization, whatever it is, it's very difficult.
Dogma, I call it doctrine and dogma.
Absolutely.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to unravel all of the things that have been raveled, if that's a word.
It takes a lot of work. It does, because it's ingrained when you're very young, and we're like a sponge at that age. So we take in things we don't even realize that we've accepted as true and believe. You know, that becomes our beliefs.
Yeah. I'm going to take it at just another stage, if you don't mind, because
absolutely.
I'm going to say that I believe it's a form of child abuse, because I do believe that's you know, a very significant aspect, and it's still obviously the same today, because impressionable children are being taught stuff that are, in my opinion, that is completely erroneous. It doesn't really stand up. And they will, you know, not them all, but an awful lot of people will have a lot of conflicts as they, you know, start to question, and those conflicts may lead to some sort of enlightenment. But more often than not, it just leads to complacency. And to me, this is so significant in your life. You need to get this aspect of your life right, before you can understand the world around you. So, but people sometimes, I hope you don't mind me using this expression, but they can't be arsed, which is an expression we use over here, which means they can't be bothered.
Yeah.
You know, and
absolutely, about everything, going on. We're too busy. No, and they haven't got past. And again, this is with no judgment. If people are listening to this, it's a discussion of what we feel we are seeing from our perspective. So I'm not trying to annoy anybody, but I have to agree with you, because I can't tell you how many people, even in the past few years, I'll say, where people refuse to change their belief systems with news, with anything like that, or they hear a few minutes of something and that's what it is. That's what it is. Nobody wants to take the time to dig a little deeper and find out what the facts are. Because look, here we are with Oliver Cromwell. And like you said, you've proven it, you've found the facts. And then you still get discredited when you have the facts that you're a conspiracy theorist, no matter what it is.
That's
no matter
so
what
true.
it is.
But you know, you know, in this world, to me, and I understand, you know, I may alienate lots of people who are listening to this, and that's fine, because you know, I don't want to do it. But I mean, people have opinions. If we all had the same opinion, where would we be? You know, it would be a very boring world.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. So when you talk about, when anybody talks about, you bring it up, the Catholic faith. So, you know, in my, you know, innocence back then, I thought this was such a, you know, incredibly, you know, and the religion, the organized religion that was Catholic faith, you know, had a wonderful history of positivity and all of the good things that it did throughout the world. You know, and I've just come in here, it's sort of at 5 or 6, and I've just come into what an amazingly positive, you know, organized religion, faith. And then, you know, when you start to just lift up the layers, and I'm just
home.
I can hear him. Yeah.
He's home. We're getting into religion.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
yeah, we didn't get into that.
No.
Okay.
You gotta change.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
You go change, Del. That's fine.
You go change, Del. He said. That's fine.
He stinks. I can smell him from here. Is this the butcher? Was he around meat today?
He's always around meat. That's what he does. He doesn't stink, though. I'll tell you that.
Okay. You see, you only see the best.
No, but but you know what? Del and I have conversations like what we're about to have all the time. We've had them on air too. We're respectful of other people. Some people need religion. I know you were saying, sorry, I was trying to remember where you were at with it, 5 to 6, and then we got interrupted. So rudely, no.
The guy has to come home. It's fine.
Yes, he does.
No, I think, like, I'm just going to segue Oliver Cromwell back into this too, because just to give you an instance, like, so, you know, early on, because I like my beliefs to have a reasonably decent evidential platform That's where I am. You know, and whether it can't, to me, be categoric one way or the other. And I'll just, you know, go on a little diversion at the moment, because, you know, what I like to say generally about the normal or the paranormal or whatever way you perceive the world, nobody in the history of the world has ever proven one way or the other that such a thing is absolutely the case. And I mean, I'm talking about something, that's my opinion. I believe, yes, people have gone very close and there's lots of evidence and there's, you know, and again, for one way or the other. But like, for instance, God, you know, nobody has ever proven, in my opinion, that God exists. Yes, you can believe he exists, but nobody has ever proven that he exists. So my mind is open on that one. I like it's open on a lot of things. And that's a very
But you know
controversial
what you
thing.
said, the operative word here, okay,
Mm,
and I like that, is my mind is open. And I
mm,
was just thinking that because, you know, things that I believe when I started this journey, how many years ago, you know, really, I think it's truth seeking, no matter what it is.
mm,
I've changed my belief systems and what I thought to be true because I remained open minded, that I don't know everything, that as new facts become apparent, as I, you know, connect with other people and see whether it's research, no matter what it is. And I'm
mm.
talking generally, not even the paranormal, anything.
Sure.
I realized that, yeah, that seems to really make sense and changed my perspective on things. And I think that we should, if we remain open minded. It's a learning process our whole life. I think we're students of life. Earth is a school.
Very, what a wonderful expression. I totally agree. And if you know, like, facts can't really, if you know, if they can't really be argued against, opinions can be changed, and that's what you just explained. And you know, to my mind, there was so much. There were so many flaws with what the Catholic faith were teaching me. And just to go back to the Cromwell thing, so what happened in his life is, so he's born into a certain age, you
Right.
know, and into a certain society, and he goes to a certain school, and what he hears in the school is and I'm just going to use this very controversial expression, the cesspit of depravity that the Catholic Church has been throughout history. So, you
It
know,
has, though. It's not untrue. Like, all I kept thinking when you've been talking about this, and I have to throw it in. And again, I'm not, some people really need religion. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think people are in for beyond a rude awakening when they really find out exactly what is going on. Like you said, the cesspit of, I forget what the
depravity,
depravity.
depravity. Yeah,
I think you're being kind, because when you start to dig,
yeah.
holy cow.
And there's a pun.
People.
Holy cow is right. Yeah, I
Yes.
would use a very stronger. I would use a stronger word. That would be a
Yeah.
better pun. Um,
Yes.
but it's and that's so. Picture this guy, and again, this all kind of nicely wraps up what we're saying. So it's Cromwell and religion. So he's sitting in this school room, and the teacher is telling him about popes throughout history who enlisted you know, people to go down to so on crusades to impose Christianity, Catholicism on those who were the great unwashed, and if they didn't conform, they just killed them. That's the way it was. You had the Spanish Inquisitions, you had the Crusades, you had what happened to the Cathars in France, where they burned men, women, and children alive, where they roasted them, where they just, you know, hung, drew, and quartered them. So this is over centuries, and several popes would have done this. And this is the Catholic faith that I was, you know, born into. And you know, it suddenly, when I discovered all these things, I thought, what am I doing? You know, this doesn't. Why would I associate myself with an organization like this? Okay, it's
That's how I
different.
feel.
Yeah, it's different now, but how different is it? Look at the last 30 years. Look at, you know, since the 80s, when all these scandals have come out and the sexual abuse and so on. That the first time I heard about an Irish priest or bishop who was involved, and that's when it just went for me, because I thought, oh my God, you know, again, there's a pun, but this is the guy who is you know, pontificating from the pulpit, you know, telling us how to live our lives, and he's molesting children, or he's got children of his own. And
I
this was
didn't
just,
know that. I did not. I don't know how I didn't know this through one of our discussions off air.
mm,
Because we have the craziest discussions, Del and I. And he said, "Well, you do know why orphanages were created in the beginning, right?" And I said, "Well, because children that don't have parents." He goes, "No, they needed a place to house the children of the nuns that have been born
mm,
out of these relationships with priests." And
yeah,
there's, again, if you're not going to allow men to marry, that,
priests.
okay, or you've taken
Men can
your,
marry, Lorilei, by the way, just so you know.
I meant with the church. I meant with the church. So if you're not allowing priests to get married and
Yeah.
you take that vow,
Mm.
that's fine. But then, like you said, they're standing up at a pulpit telling people basically, do what I tell you, not
Yeah,
what I
not
do.
what I do. Yeah,
Mhm,
exactly. And that's the irony, and that really bothered me. But the other
mhm.
thing that I can point to very easily and very clearly is that we have names over here. We talk about the Irish language, and this is how I know these things because there's a name. There are two names here that are very interesting. So there's McIntaggart and
Mhm.
there's McInnesby. Okay,
Okay.
so McInnesby and McIntyre are very Irish names, and what they actually directly translate into McIntaggart is Mac an Taggart, which is the son of the priest. McInnesby is
Oh,
Mac an Aspig, and that's the son of the bishop. So what I'm saying there is that
oh,
years ago, hundreds of years ago, before these man-made rules came in to say that priests couldn't marry, and I don't know
because
when they
men
came in.
can.
I know some who actually have. Exactly.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big advocate of marriage, by the way, so I'm not going to knock marriage. It's a
Oh,
terrific
I don't knock
institution.
marriage either. To me,
Absolutely.
love is love, and my
Yeah.
eldest son is part of the LGBTQ community, and
Yes,
his
I'm
life
aware.
partner, no
Yeah.
problem at all. I think love is love. Mhm,
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, I could completely agree.
mhm.
But those, those, I don't know. It's just such a when you go back and think of the fact that priests could have children back in the day, bishops could have had children. This was legitimately, if you know what I mean, back, that whatever you took from that story. So they actually used to be able to have children. They used to be able to marry, and then suddenly some different regime comes along and says, "Oh, do you know what we'll do? They'll just be dedicated totally to God, and they won't have any distractions with women, and let's just have that from here on in." And now suddenly they've got this, and as far as I'm concerned, priests in Ireland, they're down to a trickle in terms of ordination right now in
Here too.
2022.
Here too.
Yeah, I would believe it. Yeah, and the future isn't really very bright because a lot of the priests who inhabit or run parishes are getting very old. So the new generation are not coming through. New churches will not be built in this country. That says an awful lot. Maybe in 100 years and 200 years time, it will have said an
Hmm.
awful lot more. But even in this country, people are a lot less religious than they were. I think there's something like it's either 10 or 15%, and that's a high percentage of people who have no religion here.
Hmm.
So they would be atheists effectively or agnostics.
Hmm.
Um, so and to me, that's the trend because people are no longer sort of willing, and here comes, it's always going to be controversial when I open my mouth, to accept the fairy stories that they were taught,
Hmm.
as truth, when they were children. So they're much more accepting of a logical world in that area, in the religious
Hmm.
area, than they are of. I mean, look at all the gospels that were left out of the Bible, for
Thank
instance.
you. Thank you. From when I first met Del, I kept saying, "Well, you do know," like when we got together. I mean, I've known him, but when we got together as we were dating one another, and I said, "Well,
Mm,
you do know that the Bible is a man-made instrument. That there are so many different versions and gospels and pages and
yeah,
what have you. That
yeah,
some man or men." Probably, I don't think they had women back in those days that would have made those decisions.
no,
That, no, probably not. That only certain books were going into the Bible.
mm,
And for the longest time in the beginning, he used to say to me, "You hate the Bible." I said, "I don't hate the Bible." I said,
mm,
"There's a lot of wisdom, but what people don't realize back in the day, too, when you start to dig into it, and Dell does know the Bible better than I do,
mm,
is that I think there's a lot of parables. I think there's a lot of coded language that's in there that they weren't quite able to say that they wanted. Plus, I believe there's a lot of information, a lot of truth that was left out of there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. To me, you see, it's a very look. It's 2,000 years old, or thereabouts. I don't know. I mean, I have difficulty with the fact that our morals were handed down to us by a super natural being on a mountain to an old man on tablets. If you know what I mean. I've got a lot of trouble with that. I've got a lot of trouble with a lot of things. But a lot of it is symbolic. I get that.
You want me to join
Hang on one sec, Tom. Yeah,
Sure.
but pop in downstairs because I got my headphone. He asked, "Do you want me to join you?" I said, "Yes." He came in here earlier and I was listening to you, so he's going to pop in down below. As soon as he does, I'll let him in. Go ahead. Sorry. Let's.
No, he
You know what?
join in.
If people don't like this discussion, and I understand if you don't. No, that's why I prefaced it with, this is our opinions and what we believe to be true. We're not telling people to believe this. If something, tweaks within you, like, why are people talking about, why are they saying it? Take a look for yourself. We always tell you, do your own research, go down that trail, dig a little deeper and see what you find.
I don't make arbitrary comments unless there's some sort of substance behind them, and this is where I've gotten in life. Because I am by nature a cynic or a skeptic or whatever, and this is what I mean by earlier. It's like some very clever man like Voltaire or somebody said once, it's very foolish to believe something with a lack of evidence. Now that's a whole other conversation, because there are levels on levels, and there's something that can. But like when it comes to the Bible, I don't believe that it's a book that has much relevance these days. I mean, even in when it was written, I think, I'm guessing now, but I think it was something like 70 years after the events. The first Gospels came into being. No eyewitnesses, by the way. None of these people who wrote the Bible actually saw what actually happened. I think 70 AD was, or maybe it was, 70? And anyway, it was maybe 100 AD before the Bibles actually came to be written. So, yes, they were written by men, and they were written by people who wanted to the world to adopt a particular message and
narrative.
Narrative. The relevance of it today, and I know a lot of people will disagree, but unfortunately, the trend these days, certainly in this country and in a lot of countries in Europe, they will become post-Christian very soon. The UK is probably going to be the first post-Christian country in the world, I'd say. The Nordic countries, Scandinavia, they all, I don't know the percentages. I'm talking very generally here, but there's a very high percentage of the population in those countries who are now atheists. And I have to profess that that's where I am. I haven't, I've also written a book that's called Hallowed Be Thy Name. As opposed to hallowed, and I don't believe because I haven't got the faith to be able to take that leap, and I don't believe that it's a logical way to think.
But that's okay. Like when I have conversations with different people, like I said, I believe in a higher power, as I call it.
Can I press you? Can I press you, Lorilei, just
absolutely,
on that?
Absolutely.
Oh, would you mind? Okay, because I'd like you to throw a shape or a form around that if you could. It just, is it going to be? Is it going to be? I beg your pardon. Just let me finish. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Now I'm going to interview you. No, it's just like, is that shape going to be oblique? Is it going to be, for instance, like why is God is? So I presume we're not going to agree that God is an old man with a beard sitting on a cloud.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so is it a 25-year-old blonde? Is it a
Nope.
teenager? So
nope.
How do you throw a shape around that being?
Okay, so we're going to get into quite the discussion here then. And again, my belief, all I'm going to say is I have studied near-death experiences for 40 years professionally as well personally. I worked in palliative care. I am writing a book myself, actually 3 of them. One of them is collecting incredible, unexplainable experiences as nurses, some first responders that we see at the end of life before somebody passes. So, as I understand it, right now in this moment, we are all here for a reason. I believe in reincarnation. I believe we've had thousands of past lives.
Hmm.
I believe that is God. Is he somebody sitting on a fluffy cloud? I think we're
Hmm.
looking at that with human eyes. Okay.
Mm.
With interviewing many people and the research I've done, and again, just my perspective, I
Hmm.
believe that we are an everlasting energy, immortal energy that goes on forever and ever and ever. Right now, we're just having a human experience in this lifetime. So when we come here, and this is going to sound crazy to some people, maybe to yourself, we choose to come here. That, like, there, as I understand it,
Do you mean to
souls are.
Earth?
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
Because we come in here with spiritual amnesia. We come in here with amnesia of all of our previous lives, most of us. Um, we come in here in these dense, heavy, fragile, clumsy bodies. Um, Gifts that we used to have that we no longer use, but I believe we're capable of telepathy, telekinesis. I believe we are capable of so much more than we've ever been told or taught to believe. On top of that, we got higher mind 111. I agree with you. Well, thank you. But again, this is just my perspective, and I'm very interested in hearing yours as well, Tom. But with a little bit further with this discussion, I also believe we incarnate with certain people, and that it's almost like a play, if you will. One person
Mm.
described this, that you know what, you come here and you decide that whatever your higher self decides that it wants to learn, whatever lessons, like maybe you want to learn more about patience, you want to become better at patience in this lifetime. Well, guess
Hmm.
what, you're probably not going to get thrown into a Buddhist Zen monastery. Your life is going to carry on. You are going to have people pushing your buttons your whole life, and either you're going to get it or you don't. I think you got free will to do it. But when we pass, I believe we go back. I call it going back home. We go back home. It may sound strange. Do I have proof of this? And I know that's what you're asking for. No.
I'm bursting here, but keep going.
I know, I can see it. I can feel it. The other thing is that with what we experience paranormally, and you know Dell well enough now, Dell is still a skeptic to this day. He
Hmm.
cannot explain how he has been thrown 15 feet across the kitchen, his arm cut. When he joins, if and when I will get him to share that with you. He didn't even tell me for 2 days because he had to pull out all the electrical. He had to test it with his battery. Like, he has that kind of mind. So that's what I believe. I don't actually call God God. I would call it source energy, where we come from. I always say, do I have all the answers? No. I
Mm.
don't think none of us will have the answers until we do pass from this lifetime.
Well,
Just
that's
my
you.
belief system.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I totally agree. And what I would absolutely emphatically agree with you on is that we don't have the answers. And that's what I love about these conversations,
Yeah.
because, and as you keep warning, if anybody is listening to this and who is taking offense, we are proffering our opinions, and that's all. And we live and die by
Yeah,
them.
but that's how we learn, like, from
Yeah,
one another, right? You hear what I have to say, I hear what you have to say, and say we came
yeah.
to a point where we didn't agree. We just agree to disagree. That's
I,
what we need. We need to have
I,
more discussions like this instead of being offended or I'm triggered or I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
talk about it. We need to
Yeah.
talk. Go ahead. I know you got lots to add to this.
No, that's a good word, because everybody's offended these days by so many things. I
Hmm.
mean, you've got the snowflakes who are offended by practically everything. So,
Yes.
but we're none of us are snowflakes here.
Mm-mm.
So what I heard, if you don't mind me saying, so
Hmm.
what I heard was I heard a lot of, and which is fine, because that's the way, and you couldn't really explain it any other way. I heard a lot of, and I'm just going to throw the word in there, illogicality. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's because it's very difficult, and that's the cliche that I'll throw back at you. I also heard you just mentioned about near death experiences that
Hmm.
you say were unexplained. Now, somebody would say it wouldn't be me, because I'm not an expert in by any manner of means in this. I'm just having a conversation, and somebody will explain those near death experiences to you from a physiological point of view, from a biological point of view. I can't do that. but I would prefer that
I've
answer.
heard it and I understand it, but I'm going to tell you something else. Okay, the first week I did my show, it's funny I brought it up. I never do from my previous network. Okay, I was mentoring a young gentleman. I used to work with a Facebook group quite a bit. I no longer do that here. And I have a friend, I don't know if you've heard of her, Heidi Hollis. She is the first person supposedly to have coined the phrase Hat Man or Shadow Man. She's actually over on Coast to Coast AM. She has her own show over there.
Okay.
She was on my show. I didn't really know her. Okay, and this young gentleman I was working with, and again, I hear some pretty strange things from people, and I always
Sure
say,
you
not
do.
my job to judge, and just keep an open mind, because I think the truth will prevail eventually. It always does. And he started explaining the being that he claims he was in a previous life. He starts explaining heaven, and Heidi has had some very strange experiences in her lifetime. She's fascinating to talk to. I just messaged her. I need to have her back on here soon. She said yes. So those two never met before, and I don't have a copy of the show. I never got my archives. I'm kicking myself because there were so many good shows we had done over there. But they were finishing each other's sentences about what they had experienced and witnessed in heaven. And it was not a near-death experience, neither one of them.
Well, you see, when I hear these things, and I'm sorry because I'm a little feisty this evening. I do apologize.
Okay, let's get feisty.
So when I hear those things, there are an awful lot of scenarios that people can use or say to attract one's attention. And so somebody finishing each other's sentences and talking about a place
like
called
Darren
heaven.
Brown, like how he can influence people.
Do you mind if I come to that? Yeah, because I can't remember if I spoke to this about Del about this, but yes, that's exactly what I'm going to come to that in a second, if you don't mind. So
no, go ahead.
Yeah, but when I hear these sort of unexplainable set of circumstances that can only mean a certain thing, I don't believe that. I believe that can mean another thing. For instance, like I'm absolutely categoric in my belief that heaven is a place that doesn't exist.
Okay.
But that's in my belief, because
and I accept that.
Yeah, it's far too. I mean, because when you like. I don't even know what to say now. Where is it? How is it? What, yes, it's all in a different world or somewhere. But anyway, so and I don't have an explanation as to why those people could finish each other's sentences and how but I would much prefer an explanation that was,
wouldn't it be nice if we had all the answers? That's what I always say.
Yeah.
Like if they just told us, so we don't have to try and figure all. I hear what you're saying, because I do know about Darren Brown, because Del watches everything. I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm working on resin pieces and creating a second business here, but I hear a lot of it, and I can tell you that Del has used some of Darren Brown's techniques.
Okay.
In particular, really? I'm surprised he probably hasn't told it on air. We have a store here where they sell beer that is called The Beer Store.
Oh, well,
and I don't know if he'll want to tell the story on air or not. He didn't steal anything. He didn't take anything. He just tried one of Darren Brown's techniques. For those listening, if you don't know who he is, look him up, because if you work in the field that I do, it'll probably blow your mind about some of the things he can get people to do. All I will tell you is Del used a trick. Darren Brown had been at the racetrack with this gentleman, and they were cashing in on a ticket, and he banged on the wall and he told her how much the ticket was worth, and she gave him the money. Now, Del didn't get money back, but he just banged on it and mentioned this is what he wanted, and that's what he got. And the people behind him are going, how did you do that?
Do that.
You can do that. I understand that. And I will point out right here, for most people who do follow my show, again, there is nothing wrong. I'm going to use the term woo-woo light worker. I am a light worker. I would consider myself that for people that identify with it. But there are people whose heads are all up in the clouds and there's nothing going wrong, and we only think about positive and love and light and blah, blah, blah. I'm not one of those people. Very down to earth, very open to hearing what you had to say right there, because I can't disagree with you, Tom, because you were right. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just this is this is why you are just Della and yourself are just incredible people, because what you do is
thank you.
no, but you're amazing. I don't think you realize how amazing you are. You just you're so engaging, and you allow. Certainly the guest in this instance, but other people's opinions to you take it on board. It's not just paying
Because I'm
lip
not
service.
right. I don't need to be right. I know I'm not always right. And I can't tell you, I know better than you, and you are wrong, because I don't know. You could be right.
Yeah. And you know what? You could be right too.
Exactly.
Can I tell you the Darren Brown story?
Oh, please do.
Well, no, it's just a great story because, the clairvoyancy thing, and you used an expression that I wasn't familiar with. Did you say the light
worker?
No. Yeah, light worker. What does that mean exactly?
Oh, that's the collective term that you're not a witch, but you basically, as a light worker, like an intuitive, a healer, spreading messages of positivity, light and love. Yeah. Some of the concepts I just mentioned here with you. Spirituality, if you will. Gotcha. Is basically it's a catch-all phrase, and it's quite popular. Yes. I know within these circles and certain areas of the world that people understand. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. Well, yeah. And again, a lot of my words will probably jar, as you say, in these circles. But look, that's what the conversation is all about. So, Darren Brown, this is Googleable. It's on YouTube, and it's
Hi, Deli.
Yeah. Oh, he's there. Oh,
we're talking about Darren Brown and religion. So you'll get caught up soon.
Okay.
We may have. You're only coming in now. We may have piqued his interest earlier. Did we? No.
I should introduce, for people that don't know, this is my real partner in life. I call my husband, I guess, common law. The Dell. I've already mentioned your show, The Delicious Recipe, on Thursdays. He knows Tom. But Tom's right about to get into a good Darren Brown story.
Oh, good.
Well, yeah, I'm just raging you missed the Bible conversation that we were having, Del, because I
believe we navigated it well.
Yeah, we so did. Yeah,
we were on the same page.
Yeah, that was page 28, by the way, just in case you're curious.
And I told him about William of Orange, because there really is a William of Orange.
Oh, is there? Oh, wow.
Oh my God, how did you not know that?
She told you the story about why my
she did the hair.
Yeah.
He dyed the hair, and it turned out to be a bad accident.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and he left it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, it's his trademark. But nobody. You seem to miss the whole point that he was William of Orange, who was a real character in Irish history and Irish
when he
English
mentioned
history.
This name, I started laughing, and I said, I'm not laughing at your William of Orange. I'll tell you after your story what the William of Orange means.
I thought she was being quite rude. We let you away with that. So the Darren Brown, and forgive me, Dad, if you're hearing this for the second time.
No, not a problem.
Anyway, he is an English, I don't even know what word to describe him. To me, he's a genius, but
I think he is.
Absolutely, he's brilliant. He's a reader. He's a seer. He's if I stood in a room with him, I'd be I'd feel naked, because I'd feel he was looking right through my soul, whatever that is. And but anyway, he went to the States for the first time. This is how I remembered the video, and he convinced a clairvoyant or a psychic that he could do a show. This was an American lady, and she said, okay, well, let's do a show. We got a lot of people in an auditorium, but when the show went out, and it's probably went out on TV here, but it's on YouTube, he explained to the viewer that what he was about to do was he was about to put on a performance, and he explained that performance was an act, and he explained very clearly that it's only an act, that he doesn't see people, or at least he wouldn't see people. He's not going to connect with the other world. If the other world exists, he explained that he's going to, at the end of it, he's going to tell the people who were his subjects that this was the case. And we were all kind of intrigued, going, how's he going to do this? And is it going to work? Is it going to fail? Anyway, long story longer, he goes in, and there's people are kind of skeptical. They're he's English, he's British, he's got his beautiful accent, and they're kind of sitting there going, okay, what does this guy know about me? And very quickly, he, and you know the story. He picks something that, how could he know this about this lady? And then maybe your aunt has died, and he might say something like, "Oh, she used to make candles," and then suddenly, she's gone, "Oh, okay, yes, that's definitely me," and she died in a motorbike accident. Now, how could he know these things? And he says other things, and I know, Lorilei, that this is your world. But anyway,
I've seen this video, by the way, and even I was astounded by it. But Del has studied Darren Brown very extensively, so I have seen a lot of the videos that he does, and my appreciation for the genius of Darren Brown, and I will give him that, is he also shares a lot of his secrets.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the point, by the way, I think that he was making, correct me if I'm wrong, is that he's saying that, and he can't say anything categorical, obviously, but he's saying that there are charlatans out there.
Absolutely.
One of whom he wasn't, because he explained to the people, and they agreed to that the show would be aired. But he did, touch so many nerves. He had people crying. They were convinced that he had been in touch with their loved ones who had died, and he hadn't. And he told them he hadn't, and he does this a lot. So. And that's the point I'm making, I suppose. I can't tell you that, that there's no other world, because I don't know that.
Same as I can't tell you what I believe that it's true too. I just told you I have changed my belief systems by what I come across, the people I meet, who I learn from, research I do. And again, that's why I say this all the time. You can ask Del. I've said on air, off air. I don't think any of us will know the answers until we leave this. I call it this planet, transitioning back home, whatever it may be. And I can appreciate when people say they don't believe there's an afterlife. The only thing is with the afterlife, and Del, I was talking a little bit about this before you joined, was you are still a skeptic to this day. Like, you and Tom were probably on the same page with a lot of stuff. And when you got thrown across the kitchen, when you were in the fridge at 3 a.m. looking for the mustard, he didn't even tell me, like I had said before you come on, Del, that for a couple of days he had his battery tester, is it your voltage meter, testing everything. Well, he tells it better than I do. He still doesn't have an explanation. Is he willing to say it's the paranormal? No. When we were on TV for our interview, they were trying to get him to say the word demon. Would he say it? Absolutely not. Right, Del?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that comes into the whole part. There's that too many people, I think, jump to conclusions off the bat there, and they don't I come back from an engineering background there too. So I was electrical engineer, environmental engineering. I was iron worker, construction, stuff like that. So I know and build houses and stuff like that. So I got to go and find something 6 ways from Sunday to go and try and figure things out there before I jump to the final conclusion on something.
Excellent. Yeah.
And I think that's the way to. But I'm also open-minded. Well, it could be possibly something else that happened, maybe, but I have no explanation for it to this date. So.
Well, as a skeptic, Del, do you mind if I just chip in here? So, if you are, reasonably skeptical about things like that, can you explain, what actually happened and what you think was the reason? Is it something? Would you automatically default to a supernatural explanation, or would you consider that it was?
See, that comes kind of hard because of the few things that sort of happened in that house.
That's what I said.
It was weird because I had set up security cameras, and I put one down in the basement as well. And it all seemed to be sort of a really localized area of like about 20 by 30 out of the house from the basement to the upstairs floor where things happened. Like I have no clue. I have no clue how this cabinet. A curio cabinet. I guess it's one of those. It's a cabinet that like you put like little shot glasses or those little teaspoons and that knickknacks. It's like about 2 feet by 2 feet. It was on hooks, heavy duty hooks, screwed onto the wall. There was recycling bins underneath there, so if the dogs or cats jumped up, they would have landed in the recycling bins. This thing popped up off the wall.
Yeah.
Shot over
to the left.
Feet, right, so it popped off, came out about 4 inches, came out, severed all the cords, and then ended up another 15 feet in the living room.
And the
Holy
hooks are
crap.
still in the wall and still on the cabinet. The other thing he
I went.
almost died. Sorry, go ahead, Del, because I want to tell that story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the thing was weird is that I went and I put it back on there and I started hitting this thing
We
with
tried
a
everything.
broomstick, a hockey stick, pushing it up to get it to go in the same direction.
Yeah.
Couldn't even get the thing off the wall, or it would just swing on the wall. One hook would come off, but not the other. And I was like, okay, well, that's sort of a little bit weird. And then, yeah, that part with
That's a little bit weird. That's not a little bit weird.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is what happened, Tom. Okay, some of the strange. This is my second book I am writing, and I have pictures. I have all kinds of stuff from this that we can't explain. I wasn't sleeping very well. And apparently he had a security camera in the laundry room where a lot of the activity was in our old house in the basement. And apparently I was sitting on a chair and I was standing up and I was talking and laughing and pointing at something. I don't even remember this. All I remember is he came in the room. This is the middle of the night. And he said he was very angry with me and he was speaking very harshly to me. And it takes a lot to get really angry. I was like, I just felt so angry. Don't you talk to me that way. And he's going, come on, Laura, come on. You got to get out of here. Took me out of the room. I'm fine. And I'm going, what the hell just happened? I'm laying in bed next to him. Yeah. And all of a sudden it's like he's seizuring. He was already asleep. And I'm shaking him and saying, Del. And I swear to God to you, Tom, you've met Del a few times. It was his voice. And he said, I'm okay. I'm all right. And I knew there was no way in hell. And I've got a bad back and our bed used to be against the wall. I leaped over there, picked him up, and I am shaking and shaking and shaking him. I swear to God to you, Tom, this black stuff started coming out of him. And then you could pick up the story because he woke up, but he said something felt like it was breaking your ribs.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, just felt like
what was this black stuff?
Oh yeah. Just I started coughing up all this black mucus and
it
stuff
looked
like that.
Goo.
Out of your mouth.
Yeah,
out of my nose. It was coming out of my nose, out of my mouth, and it felt like somebody was crushing my chest. I was like, well, I don't know what it is. I smoke, and I'm like, but I've never coughed up.
Okay, I even considered that being a nurse. Like, okay, right. Again, are we saying that? Yeah. But I'm telling you, a lot of strange stuff went on in that house. A lot of people besides ourselves experienced strange stuff. Pictures. Yeah. Again, are we saying there's a heaven, there's a God, no, but there's no explanation.
Yeah, you see, this is what makes conversations like this so interesting, because you can't discount, that sort of a story. You have to. I can't explain it. You guys can't explain it. You can choose the explanation that you'd like to kind of, embrace. I wasn't there, so you say it very honestly and very sincerely. And that's, but my starting
that's point. Why I took pictures. I almost took a picture of what he had come out of him. And I thought, oh, that's a little bit much. And I'm kicking myself that I didn't. I took pictures and video of everything, Tom, because again, I come from a science background with a nurse. I went to university. I have my science degree. He's got a science. So we were trying to what the heck is going on? I kept saying to Del, we don't document this. Nobody in their right mind will ever believe us. Because it's so incredulous, the things that happen.
It's a great idea that you had the foresight to be able to do that. Most people have experiences that they don't, and you've nailed that. I'm interested to read this book, by the way, when it comes out. But one of the things. Sorry, go ahead, Del. Yeah,
I was gonna say that the one thing that goes on, the reason that we started watching things is we had our car batteries out of 3 vehicles all were dying all the time. And tires were being deflated. So I bought security cameras to find out if it was kids playing around and letting the air out of tires and stuff like that. And then go through the tape, and all of a sudden you wake up the next morning and all 3 batteries out of every vehicle is dead. And I know there's a thing called parasitic battery drain if you have sort of a short in a vehicle. Went through all that stuff. But this was going on for 6 or 7 months when all this activity was sort of happening in the house. And I was like, yeah, this seems a little bit odd. This is and she'll jump to the part there that she's thinking paranormal. And I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna figure this thing
I
out.
know,
Period.
but
Like,
But we meet in the middle. And like I said, so
Yeah.
I got to ask you though, Tom, because we're on the paranormal. So I know part of the stuff that Gavin had sent was about the paranormal. So where was you supposedly experienced, or what were people seeing, or did you experience this, or?
So yeah, no. Well, the very short answer is no. Because I'm on the fence, and I think I've
Yep.
mentioned this on a couple of occasions. I have never had a paranormal experience. I yearn to have one because I think that would make
Just
such
come
a
visit
difference.
us. You'll get lots of stuff. There you go.
I'm
I never
booking
thought
the
I'd have a
ticket.
discussion about fairies with Del. Let's put it that way, and little
Yeah.
people. But I digress. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, absolutely. No, no, it's just that there are so many things that would, and this is the problem with life. You're never going to get that epiphany. You're never going to get that. Well, some people do, obviously, but I seem not to be. I've reached my 62nd year, as I mentioned before, and I haven't. I need to navigate the world with how I understand it. So I don't. Yes, there are lots of stories that you mentioned earlier about Cromwell and the Civil War, and ghost stories on battlefields, and there is a wonderful story. You talked about reincarnation before, and I, Del will hear this again, but I won't just. We might mention it in a couple of minutes. That I'm intrigued with. You talked about we may have come from somewhere and we're going back home. When this is finished, in my belief system, I believe that we haven't come from anywhere. That the Darwinian explanation is perfectly acceptable to me. That science can explain everything that happened. I just love the whole. This telescope, this James Webb telescope that looked back 4 billion years last week, and it's even difficult to see how can they look back in time, but that's apparently what happens. So to my mind, everything is explainable by and this is going to annoy so many people, but by scientific or logical means. That's the evidence that I much prefer. So this is my world. My world is I will generally default to the logical explanation, and I get that you guys have just explained things, situations that happen to you, but while it's not explainable, I will much like Del. I will try and find if I was an engineer or a scientist in some way, and I'm not. And this is the problem with the world. You see, we're not all that clever. We're not. Is that's the world that we live in? That we're all given certain levels of intelligence where we can't. We have to accept certain things because you're not clever enough to work out what's really going on.
I don't think that you're not clever enough. I think what it is that maybe it's not. Del and I talk about this often. It's not in your bubble, if you will. There's so much going on in the world, right? That where we experience certain things that are close and near to us, and then we see things on the outside that, like you said, you can't explain it. So I'm going to default to logic, because I think that that's human nature. We have we've got to go somewhere with it.
Yeah, but to my mind and to my experience, Lorilei, it's human nature to default to the supernatural a lot quicker than it is to the scientific.
With TV, I think because of TV, before
That's
TV,
correct.
it wasn't. People would think they were losing their mind.
Absolutely.
And although it's a night, by the way, we were never looking for the paranormal. The paranormal found us, and how this happened. Yeah. And it started with a dream 16 years ago that is so real, Tom, that I feel like I had it 10 minutes ago. And I will tell you, something appeared to me that told me it was demonic. I can tell you what it was wearing, what it looked like, what color hair, what color eyes, the whole bit. It tried to get me to follow it. And I've had people even say, well, maybe that was your subconscious and, your religious dogma that you learned as a child. Maybe. I can't say no. It seemed very real, but it
very
gave
real
me its
to
name,
you,
gave me its name, gave me its animal form. And of course, I did not agree to follow it. I can't say on air what I told it to do, but it was not nice. And then it laughed at me and said, well, when I said to leave, And I didn't say it that nicely. It went,
Yeah.
oh, no, 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 no. Every time you see a crow or raven, you'll know who it is. Now, with our Catholic background, Dell's been baptized in 3 religions. He also knows Catholicism.
Yes.
The name I had been given, I had never heard of in all the years of going to church and Catholic school and everything else.
Okay.
And
Okay.
he
So you couldn't make it up.
No, he spelt it for me. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked. And when I woke up from this dream, like I told Dell about it, because we were just friends at this time, I woke up shaking, crying, and in a sweat. That's not me. And to remember it with every detail like I do now still. But the scary part is, and tell me how this happened, 10 years later, because I get people, like I said, contacting me with, needing a little bit of help or maybe information or what have you. And they had come across some type of name. They wanted to know, was it within this dogma? Is it demonic?
And this was the name.
Well, no, they gave me a name. It wasn't the name I was given.
Yeah. Okay.
It started with an M. The name I was given started with a few letters afterwards. I don't say it. I do believe scientifically in energy. Not giving it the attention. But anyways, as I'm looking up the name they gave me, there on the page was the exact spelling, the exact name, the exact animal form, and what have you with the lore. How do we explain that?
Well, I can't, and I'm not going to try. But
Like I said, it's crazy. That's why I said I could never question what you're saying.
No, exactly. But can I just say, so I have opinions on what you've just said, because I have opinions on everything.
I want to hear it.
So, again, it's a situation that doesn't, easily bring forth an explanation, because again, you're exceptionally sincere in what you say, and you experience this in your opinion, and I don't know how to deal with that on a.
Plus, you weren't in my dream, right, Tom?
Yeah. Well, maybe tonight, Lorilei. You've done very well, by the way. So at the end of the day, what I would be thinking is that there will be an explanation that I can't identify there, but I would be thinking, so a demon. So I would be thinking, what the heck does that even mean? I would immediately go to a Hollywood movie that has told us that demons exist. I can think of Stranger Things right now. I don't know if that's streaming. I think it's probably streaming over there. Yeah. So that's. I think there's some.
Haven't watched season 4 yet.
Nor have I. But so again, these are the things that inhabit our imaginations, and but take it back again. So take it back to, what are we saying here? Are we saying they come from hell, or they because again, I would contend that hell is a fictitious place. It doesn't exist.
So would I.
Part of, yeah.
So would
okay. So then they come from, or something. Is it flesh and blood that comes from some dimension that I can't explain, or that you can't explain? Yeah. So what are we saying here? What is the source of that particular? Yes, I understand you had an experience, but what's the source of, what the heck is a demon? I don't for a second.
This guy looked like a man. Like a man.
Yeah, but that's the part is, though, is that that's your interpretation of your reality, of what you've seen there, right? So that's the thing where it comes difference. I understand what Tom's saying there is that we can't understand your experience because we're not seeing it through your experience.
And I agree with Tom. I agree with him. I agree with everything.
Well, we're not questioning. I'm not questioning, Lorilei, for a second, that you had that experience. I suppose. And again, it's like death. And you mentioned a very interesting word. And if you don't mind, we'll hone in on that now, because so, and I've said this, and Dell will hear this for the second time. So when you're talking about consciousness when one dies, and all of the process of death, and the decomposition, and what happens to the body, and so on. And to my mind, because I've thought about this, and I've looked at it, and I've read it, and all of those things
experienced it.
Okay, that's very. Can we come back to that? Did you just say that you've experienced death, or other people's deaths?
Other people's deaths from before birth, practically, to over 100 years of age.
Okay,
a lot. No, I haven't. I think I had a near-death experience as a toddler. I don't speak to my parents, but as I understand it, I do believe I have had one as about almost 3-year-old.
Well, that's wonderful, and
Mm-hmm.
it's brilliant to be able to harness that, and because it's obviously shaped you in some way at such an early age. I haven't at any age had anything like that, and again, like whoever has had, they're either very lucky or they're blessed in some way that they can relate to that and make that form their opinions. I unfortunately I'm working in that bubble where I've got more questions, so many more questions than answers. So, but when you talk about energy, that's what I think is the key to this paranormal afterlife, and if you want to throw in demons as well, because as far as I'm concerned, the human species, exists on Earth, and then we spoke before about other planets and other potential life forms and other potential galaxies and universes and parallel dimensions. But when it comes to energy in this world or in this Earth, that's the key to me to where something can be explained, because I believe what I believe in, and I think it's a fact, is that energy actually doesn't dissipate.
I'm writing that right down, the law of physics. I know Del wants to say something when you're finished, and I'll write that down.
Sure. It's just, I think we have enough energy, and this has nothing to do with consciousness or the human physical system. We have enough energy to light a bulb that's something like 20 or 30 watts, energy, which is very separate. So where does that go when you die? That's a rhetorical question.
I just wrote that question down. Where do we go then? Because law of physics, then I'll stop, Del, because I know you got a big thing to say there. Law of physics, okay, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred from one place to another.
Correct.
So first of all, where did the energy come in from, and where does it go when we leave? Go ahead, Del.
Yeah. I just wanted to go back to this one part there. When it comes into suggestion, and that was when I came in there, you guys were talking about Darren Brown. And the thing that I liked about him the most was that he explained everything and how he set it up, and that was good. And he did this one thing where he went to the racetrack.
I started to tell it about the beer store. I didn't want to say too much. No, but Del will tell it much better. I didn't know if you wanted people to know.
And what he did was that he went into the racetrack, and he goes and gets a ticket there for the race. And he goes to the counter, and he lost the race. His ticket's a loser. And he smacks the table right in front of the girl. He goes, "That's the winner." And she pays him out $114.
And once you pay it, I guess, even if there's an error, they can't change it.
Yeah. And you did the same thing.
And he did this 3 times. He donated the money to charity afterwards anyways. But the thing was is that then he explained is that he had already pre-suggested this girl for 6 months. He'd already found her out, and he was given suggestions. So this is a part that this is a question. This is a thought that's going through my mind here too. With a lot of media and television stuff like that, because Eric Bernays did this too, as well as about power suggestion and telling a lie and stuff like that. If you put this in and power suggestion in there, that could cause you to start thinking something different than what it is.
I agree.
And you got to figure right now. I had a picture I used to post up there before. It was 1918 New York, and it was just electrical lines all over the place. There's telephone lines going everywhere and power to everything, and it was just a sea of wires all over. Now today, there is no lines anymore. They're underground, but there's so much Wi-Fi energy and 5G, 3G, 4G. You don't see the wires anymore, but it's just bombarded with electrical energy that's going through there, because you're not seeing it. You don't know. It's like, with the high tension electrical lines, people were getting sick from those things. There was the amount of energy that were going out. So you got to figure what's going off there in a town, and especially these mass cities with all this, I guess you could say,
invisible energy.
Invisible energy that's going on there. And they've done tests on this. I've looked in this and about how they can go and manipulate energy. You ever hear about the brown note? The brown note is something that they've been trying out in the UK and also in the States. It's a very low frequency that they put these speakers there. They use it in the military too as well, and they pump this low deep of vibration energy, and it causes people to release their bowels, right? So it's
I wasn't
called,
expecting that.
Yeah, it's for
yeah,
crowd dispersion.
yeah,
Okay.
just to get them to run away, right? Just nobody wants to go and
Crap
crap
their
their
Yeah.
pants out in front of everybody else. You want to go and run away, right? But
Yes.
this is a technology that's out there, and it's
Wow.
yeah, it's amazing how I think Tesla was on this whole thing there with when he was talking about 3, 6, and 9, and then he said with energy modulation, fluctuation, frequency, that there was so much more that can be sort of done with this stuff. That's the whole, but that's where he basically came up with AC current though, and but there's other things. There was that if you look back in the past, a lot of stuff with churches and that is with the hymns and the way the spires were and the way that the church
Yeah.
chapels inside were to
Okay.
resonate to
Yeah.
cause a vibration
Yeah.
and to cause a feeling. And that's why certain songs are done in certain ways. Yeah, like they that's why they always said like the devil's note in the blues, right? That dropped quarter note, and it sort of was a dissonant to it, right? That was away from the angelic note to the dissonant note. And there's a lot, like I play guitar, I play piano,
It's
and stuff like
complicated.
that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but there's a lot of things that are involved with that, with frequency, vibration, and amplitude. And I'm just wondering if some of this stuff is that we're being bombarded. There could be, I'm not saying this is, I'm just saying there could be a possibility that people nowadays are seeing a lot more paranormal activity because we're bombarded with so many frequencies.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, that's very interesting.
Or
because
Project Mockingbird still exists too. We are being
that's true, yeah.
That's why it's called programming with TV programs. Heck, we could do a whole show on that stuff because Joe Montaldo, who owns this station, when we've done panel shows, he likes to call me Conspiracy Princess. And I always say, no, the stuff that I try to educate myself with, and this is why I'm open to having a discussion like this, Tom, is because a lot of stuff out there. Oliver Cromwell, we've had him villainized, and I'm really glad that you pulled Adolf Hitler and Osama bin Laden in, so people realize the level that this poor gentleman was villainized. We didn't even get into about his head, what happened with that.
We got time.
No, but I think that's important.
I think because they might have heard it on my show, but on your show,
we have a different audience. This
is an interesting story because this is really, really crazy. Go ahead, Tom.
See, what did I tell you, Tom? I told them before it came on, you're more than welcome to come. It's not your show. No, we do shows together all the time. Like, that's why we always tell people, I check with my guests the day of, and, once in a while people forget or whatever. And I always say, don't worry, I got a built-in guest. And he does too.
It's the informality that also makes the guests very relaxed as well. We're just having a conversation, it's just amazing. I wanted to come back to so many things you've mentioned there. The problem with 2 hours isn't enough, by the way.
Well, you have to come back. You'll have to come back, and we'll have Del on if you can get a Monday off.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an interesting guy. I'm going to sound boring now because this is anyway. It is an interesting.
Well, we
story.
can go back. We can go wherever you want. You're the guest.
Yeah,
I always say it's your show. So
it's funny, isn't it? I get more excited about this conversation than I am about my own book and talking about the subject.
Well, let's just tell the story of the head, then we'll go
Let's
back.
do it. Yeah, because it's also.
How about you just go like this? It says the head ended up somewhere where it wasn't supposed to be. So let's go back to where
it traveled
where it started from.
And how did someone get the head?
Excellent. So, firstly, the story of the head's life is that it was actually affixed to the rest of his body at the beginning of its life. And so when, because of a combination of certain circumstances, Cromwell, as I mentioned before, became the head of state in the UK. Now, that didn't go down well with the royalists because it's all about heads. He had chopped off the head of the king. So when Cromwell died, he was the main target for the royalists who came back. And King Charles II came back onto the throne. And even though he was dead, they dug up his body because they wanted to show. They unburied him, as they use the expression. So you were talking earlier on, Lorilei, about to put people off doing something like he did. This is a very good example, even at death, beyond death. So they hung, drew, and quartered his body, as an example in public places. So.
Nothing sends a message like a public drawing and quartering.
And this is 2 years after he's dead, So,
oh,
this
dear
is
God!
emphatic.
Yeah,
the corpse, exactly. Yeah, it's not obviously. It's to cause absolute horror. Yeah, in the world. Anyway, so London, 1660 this was, and so everybody knows it's Cromwell. They're decapitating. It took 6 blows to chop the head off because the head has those marks on the back wherever he was cut off. And so anyway, they put the head, just to sort of emphasize the fact that he's dead, on a railing outside Westminster Hall. And this is Googleable. There's a picture that actually is on the internet with the spike still through his skull, because it comes to that, and I'll explain how that happened. But anyway, a storm came about in 20 years later in the 1680s. It stayed up there that long. It wasn't just there for a couple of days. It was there for ages. And people were used to looking at Cromwell's head. And this is the guy who used to, govern, and people used to kowtow to. And there's his head. And, hi, Ollie, what's the weather going to be like today? It was a whole big thing.
Yeah.
And so when his head blew down, a soldier who was on duty below, he picked up the head and stuck it in his coat. I thought, what the heck am I going to do? So I'll take that, I'll run home with it. And he ran home with it. And then he realized that he did the wrong thing, because the following day there was an outcry from the authorities who said, where's Cromwell's head? They they put out a reward for it. It wasn't enough, so he decided to keep the head. And he panicked a little. Anyway, he lived his life. We have to fast forward now because it gets a little, so we have to get through centuries. And he bequeathed the head to his daughter, who sold the head to a guy who was in a circus, and then who sold the head to, who owned a circus. So his head is going around a circus, and this is Oliver Cromwell's head. A gentleman then eventually got the head, who was a bit of a not a philanthropist or philanderer. I always get mixed up with those two words.
I know. Yeah, it's so easy.
So easy, because I'm a philanthropist.
Yes.
And anyway, he used to display the head at dinner parties, where the head would be handed around, and maybe people would pick off a bit of the nose or a bit of the ear.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, I've got a bit of Oliver Cromwell's head. This is mad. So it came right up through the centuries to the 1930s.
I have to say, it gives a real thing to picking one's nose or somebody. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
It's not just a bogey, it's actually part of the nose.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Wilkinson family, there are books written on Oliver Cromwell's head, by the way. This is absolutely the case. Go on Amazon, find them. It's a very long story. I'm trying to condense it for you guys. And the Wilkinson family decided in the 1930s that they'd get tests done on the head just to make sure that it was his. And it was, because they were warped. He used to have warts. He had one here and one in his eye socket. And there were marks on the skull, which kind of pinpointed where the warts were.
Wow.
The portraits that had been done of him, scientifically were measured nose to eyes to mouth to chin, all that kind of stuff, whatever the technology, the science was at the time. Anyway, so they decided, okay, we've got Cromwell's head, what will we do with it? It took them 30 years to make a decision. And eventually in 1960, that's 1960, and they decided to bury the head in the college that he attended, which was Sidney Sussex College in Cambridge. Now, the dean of the college was the only one who knows where the head is actually buried, and he passes the secret down to other deans. The current dean is the only one who knows where if he has a heart attack, we're all in trouble.
That's what I was thinking. If someone died suddenly, like, what do you do? Have it in like a time capsule hidden somewhere so people could find it?
I think he's not allowed. He's not allowed to die suddenly, because his head would be taken off too. I don't know what's going on. They must have a plan B.
They must.
I'm coming to the kicker, because I haven't got there yet. But in March 1960, Oliver Cromwell's head was finally buried in his college. Lorilei, I was born in March 1960. So the reincarnation insinuations come from there, and I can't.
Are you coming to Canada? Take care of a few problems for us if you're reincarnated.
I bring my trusty sword.
Yes, bring your trusty sword. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thing, you know. Sorry, Lel.
I said we have somebody here that you can take care of.
Yeah, I already asked that earlier.
Is he
Just
Trudeau?
said
Yeah. We can't mention names.
It rhymes with Trudeau.
Okay. But anyway, so yeah, the whole reincarnation thing that, you know, some people kind of, you know, suggest is a real thing, may well be. And I've had experiences in my life which makes me often look at the world through 17th century eyes. And if I was that way inclined, I would say I am Oliver Cromwell reincarnated. I don't believe I am at all. I'm not saying that.
Maybe you're somebody that was very closely associated, because I'm almost wondering, so when did they bury his head in 1960? In March?
In March, and I was born in the same month, you know? So there's the thing, like, I mean, that's what I'm saying. So people who have been reincarnated, there's
a way you can find out. There's a way you can find out.
Okay, is this DNA?
No.
No.
Okay.
You got to be open-minded.
Well, you know, I am. Okay.
No, I can't do it. I have somebody actually from the UK. He was excellent. He was a professor, I believe, of psychology and stuff. He does deep hypnosis. I believe it's in the omega or theta levels.
Oh my God, I'm so in.
He does past life regressions. I know two people that do that. Chris Lee, who is the husband, a very good friend of mine, who is from the UK. But they're Canadian. Or Steve, I'll have to look Steve up and I'll try and send him your YouTube channel. He was an excellent guest. Actually, he was one of Gavin's authors too.
Okay.
And he does that. And I really liked what he did and how he explained what he did.
Well,
and he could specifically regress you, unless you weren't meant to know what you would see. But you're not put in a trance, and you know you see those people up on the stage with stage hypnotists and stuff.
I know. Did you just say, Lorilei, unless I was if I'm not meant to know, what that's an interesting statement that you just made there.
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, what I mean by that is,
yes,
and I'm not an expert in this field.
I'm not being disingenuous, by the way.
No,
I
know
curious.
You're not. Yeah. And other people probably wonder what that means. So maybe with your higher self, your subconscious, if you will, because we have a subconscious, for whatever reason, because that's where they go with that hypnosis and into past lives. So I don't know.
If
what
you're not meant to know, so does that mean you're a bad subject?
No, this is where I have the sort of the anti part of that when
he does,
when somebody says this, and this is why we bounce things off with each other, is that when somebody says if you're not meant to know, that sort of just raises the hairs on my head, going, okay, are we doing a Darren Brown thing here? Well, we didn't
but if you're open to trying it, like I said, if you were willing to try it and see what happens, and again,
that to me, you see that.
Yeah,
no, go ahead,
like you got nothing to lose, and
absolutely, Well, can I tell you, right off the bat, I would embrace that with open arms. I would really love that to happen, because I'd love to see what would happen. And the natural cop out, if you know what I mean, if it wasn't meant to happen. You know, that sort of explains why. Do you know what I mean? Why it doesn't work?
It doesn't, as far as I know. That's not a usual occurrence. Okay, like I said, I've had it done myself. Because my Chris Lee, who I've had on, when you have him on a podcast, he'll ask you, "Are you open to trying a session, just so you know what it feels like to experience it and explain." You know, what you went through yourself objectively, or even subjectively, if you want, so that he's not sitting there just trying to tell people what it is. We're having a conversation, and I've experienced it, and I was open to it. I wanted to try it.
Well, this is one thing that I always find really interesting when anybody does these things about past life regressions. Nobody ends up coming up that they were a pig farmer in Iowa, or
that's not true.
Or they were they were a shepherd out in Russia with llamas and stuff or whatever they had out there.
I don't know what you're
It
watching, but depending
says
on
everybody was
watch.
like, oh, I was like the royal guard to
Princess Diana.
Cleopatra. I was
Princess Diana. Do you remember you had a Princess Diana case?
Yeah.
Like there was a guy, I think was it in France or something?
I don't think I'd heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I know. But yeah, look, I understand that there are obscure, stories that people. But to my mind, if I embrace, I don't believe I can be hypnotized. That's the problem. I'd be going into this going, look, I really want it to happen, and whenever it goes off, I want that switch to go off, and I go on, that it works. But I just don't know that I would be a good subject. But again, I would absolutely embrace. There's so many things I need to say. Can I introduce, if you don't mind, change the subject slightly and introduce James Randi?
Please do. Yeah.
Yeah. So James Randi, is that a name you guys are familiar with?
That's exactly. I was just going to say that because you were saying about the amazing Randy. I was going to talk about the man they call Ravine, and it's all about suggestion.
But that's not James Randi.
Ravine. Well, no, James Randi was American. The Ravine was the Canadian one. Same thing. They're stage hypnotists. They're very, very famous. They went all over North America and the world. Yeah.
Yes.
But I want to hear what he has to say about James Randi. So
it's just that, like, he, the story. I don't know if I have to go through it or not, but he was.
But there's people listening who may not know who James Randi is.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah. So James Randi was, let's call him. He was magician is the wrong word to use, but he was a
circus performer, illusionist, and an escape artist that got into dealing with pulling out people that were saying that they were psychics and paranormal stuff there. And he did a whole show on that, and he got $1 million. Go ahead.
And he exposed various individuals, and they were
absolutely.
We had the conversation, Del, where people had wearing earpieces at
it's been through the annals of time that people have done this with abilities.
Yeah. Some of the televangelists are they're just not real, and they con people. But James Randi had, this reward that he had put out there for anybody who could credibly provide some sort of, and it didn't have to be, 100% all singing, all dancing. It just had to be something that he couldn't explain in the supernatural arena. Something that whatever it was, and lots of people tried and came along, and he called them out. More often than not in the first 10 seconds explaining what they were going to do, and they were all tricks. So nobody ever is the short answer, the short way of finishing.
Have you ever watched his April Fool's joke from, I think it was a couple of years ago?
Go on.
It's on YouTube, and I'm trying to remember it, but he actually said somebody won $1 million, and he brought the person up, and he had them do all this stuff. Like, it was really astounding to see what this person. It involved computers, and I thought, well, isn't that kind of cheating? Like, if it's computers and blah blah blah. And at the end, he said, "April Fools."
Well, the part that was really interesting out of that amazing Randy is that the other magician Banachek, and when Banachek was very young, he had these two magicians go in, and they went to Boston. I think it was the MIT, because the government wanted to go into this whole thing about paranormal stuff, about them bending spoons. So they had James Randi as the person that's writing all these rules and that. And then these two guys that were his apprentices, that the university and the government didn't know were his apprentices, went in there, and they went in and they would sneak in the middle of the night, and they'd bend and break the spoons and do all this stuff there. And it's great.
I have a problem with spoon bending.
It's a really interesting documentary, because he explains this whole thing, and he explains about the $1 million challenge. And then it goes into his life about how he was duped by his boyfriend and stuff like that, who was somebody else. That was really interesting.
I have a problem with spoon bending, because I had something else in my mind that spoon bending was going on, like literally focusing and watching the spoon bend. And, I forget who was talking about it. I thought, well, I got to see what they're talking about. And when I looked at what these people were doing, I'm going, really? Really? like how do I know you didn't just have another spoon down there and grab it, because you could go but to me, that's not spoon bending.
Yeah, I don't. Uri Geller, I presume you're familiar with Uri
Yeah.
Geller.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
That was
yeah.
the big fight there between the two
I
of
was
them there.
thinking
Yeah.
of him. I couldn't remember his
Yeah,
name. Yuri
he's the
Geller.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's over at this neck of the woods.
Mhm.
And I'm just watching the time, so there's a couple of things I need to get in, if that's okay.
Let's go for it. You have to come, but please come back again, Tom.
Well, can
I hope so.
I thank you. You're so good to invite me back. But there's one, if we do come back, and can I suggest a topic that may take up some time? It's nothing to do with Cromwell.
No
It's
worries.
basically very little to do with paranormal activity, but it is in this arena. And maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't.
We can talk about whatever you like. Like, as you
Okay.
can see, Del and I can talk about all kinds of things. So, and you're the guest, so you choose the topic. But please, let's slip in what you want to talk about. Get in here for the
Well,
last few minutes.
I think so. So this next program could be a series of programs if we do this, because it's something
I
that
love
I
it.
got so interested in. I got obsessed by. It's fascinating, layer upon layer of mystery and intrigue and death and
Ooh.
murder and
Love
treasure
it.
and any
Ooh.
amount of things. So it's French and it's Rennes-le-Château.
Okay.
Any lights going off?
Yeah, the
No.
name sounds
I've
very
heard that
familiar to me.
name.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Del and I do series, by the way, together. We used to do shows back to back or
Okay.
one night after. So we could do that, couldn't we, Del, with Tom?
Just so what you need to do is, if it's okay, and I'm encouraging you on a live show, so you can't say no, because so you've heard of the Da Vinci Code.
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, so now we're in the ballpark. Okay,
Yeah.
so the Da Vinci Code was born out of the Rennes-le-Château story. And it's
I
all-
did not know that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all to do, and I've been to Rennes-le-Château on many occasions, and it's all to do with, and I'm just going to succinctly, again, watching the clock, explain that it's, and people I'm sure out there have heard of this. So there's a priest who comes to an impoverished village in France. He's got no money. The village has no money, and within a very short space of time, something like 6 or 8 years, he has the equivalent of these days $3 million, which he reforms the whole village. He builds a church, he builds a villa, and that's where the intrigue is sourced. And there are mysteries about, people suggest, yeah, it's incredible that the tomb of Jesus is in this area.
And the
Wow.
Merovingian, there's a whole bunch of...
Exactly. The Cathars, correct. Are you
Mhm.
good?
The Rosicrucians, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I
Exactly.
told you we could talk about it. We just
Yes.
don't always talk. We could talk about this, definitely.
And the Priory of Sion.
Oh,
the
yes.
the bloodline of Jesus.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All of those. And just to sort of, again, watching the time, I had a moment to myself one day in the middle of Rennes-le-Château where I had read several books, and there are documentaries out there, and the documentaries are amazing. Henry Lincoln, who wrote The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail,
I haven't read
with
that.
two other, you really need to read that.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
Yeah, because that's amazing. That sort of tells. So the idea is that Mary Magdalene, a lot of people think, and I think she did, as far as I remember, she ended up in southern France.
Yeah, and had kids and was married
and
to
had
Jesus.
kids. Well, see, that's a suggestion. And the fact is that the story goes that he didn't die on the cross. Shock, horror.
I've heard that and believe that too.
Well, and that he went to the south of France and they lived out their days in this area. So it's seismic, whether you're a conspiracy theorist or whether you're just interested in the story for the sake of the story. But trust me, the whole landscape is full of mystery and pentagons, and it's just, I can't tell you the amount of layers that are in the story. I'm sorry for going on about it.
That's almost like people have said, the conspiracy theorists, that Adolf Hitler lived out the rest of his days in Costa Rica.
I believe he
South
did.
America.
He did.
I believe he did.
Well, there's a possibility that he did. Where's the body? We've never seen a body.
Yeah.
But anyway, Rennes-le-Château is if you don't mind, and you can ignore me and you can say no. Look, Tom,
I already said yes. I can't wait. I love it. Del and I have another guest that he's met. That was a friend of mine. I told him you're gonna love her, and he does. And now that our shows aren't on the same night, we can't always do it back to back. But Varla Ventura, she's an author too. super interesting lady like yourself. You're not a lady, but super interesting. And we usually have her on, but I'd love to do this. Would you join us too, Del?
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Listen,
Yeah.
This would be terrific if you
I
would,
love it.
because what you will do, and I'm serious, there will be people out there, guys, whose lives you will change, because they will get on a plane, they will go to Rennes Chateau. There's only about 60 people living in the village. It's on the top of the world. It's an amazing, and when you Google this, you'll see the view in itself. It's an intrinsically beautiful village, medieval, lots of history. But anyway, all of that will come. And you will literally change people. Like, people will go over there because the treasure apparently has not all been found. And over the years, there's a sign outside the village that says you can't dig in this village, because they've had so many people come to dig. But I don't think the treasure is in the village, and nobody does. But anyway, so it's a whole treasure story.
Oh, wow.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening to that, look forward to that, because we're giving Tom an absolute yes. We want to do this. We want to talk about it, and I'm sure
we get to do like a show
on
your show, and then bump into an hour into mine, and then bump into there, and like do a little Carter stepper thing, whatever.
Well, do you know what? Since I've met you guys, I've been introduced to you guys, I want to keep this going, because I've been very disappointed earlier on, thinking, oh my God, this is the end now, because we've been chatting, we've been talking. Del and I have had 2 shows, and I apparently I wrote a book, by the way. I don't know if that's part of the same deal.
Let's tell them where to find your book. We've only got a minute or 2 left, but we will have Tom back on for sure, because look we went all around the world and back again, basically, to Oliver Cromwell to tell people where to buy your fantastic book, Tom. So where can they buy it?
You don't know it's fantastic.
I do have a copy of it. I did start.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Okay. No, don't embarrass yourself by saying you got to the first chapter and didn't read on.
Not all the way on. I usually get into the first or second page, because I have quite a few authors Gavin sends me. I wish I had enough time to sit and read.
No, that's fine. The book is,
I read at my breaks. I'm a little bit more diligent than my other half there.
Okay.
He's better than me. Anyways, where can they find your books?
Look, the best way to do is go on johnhuntpublishing.com. It's there. There are lots of reviews on that page that'll give you a flavor of what it's about. I call it faction, because it's a fictional biography but based on fact. So it's a new word I've coined. And
trademark
it's just, I think I will. And it takes him from when he was an infant to when he dies, and spoiler alert, he does die at the end. But it's not so much my. But do we? But it's not so much that I've made an interesting story. His life is the interesting story. I've just embroidered, the whole narrative around that. But it's a fantastically amazing story of his life, and he was such a fascinating character.
And I have a link to it in the write-up, folks. Del, you want to tell them quickly where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and going to have Big Jim back on again, and we're going into the blood diamond African trade.
Ooh. Sounds exciting, you guys. You don't want to miss that. Big Jim's always got great stories. And I want to thank you all for being here. As always, I'm sending you all so much love and light. We will be back next Monday, same time, same space. I meant to note who I'm having on. I do have a guest. It's a female, and I think it's one of Gavin's authors. I'm getting caught up here. I was only booking week to week with the summer, or before the summer, and with what was going on. But now we're starting to get in more of a regular schedule. So again, thank you so much, Tom. I can't wait to have you back on. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks Del.
Very much, Lorilei. Thanks, Del.
For joining us. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. And again, we will see you same time, same space next week. Oh yeah, if you want to get a hold of me, facebook.com/The Angel Rock, whether you want to book a reading, healing session, mentoring. And I've got 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal, Angel Rock for many of some of the topics we've discussed here tonight. So we will see you all next week again. Thanks, everybody. Bye.